Hello, guys. Can you hear me? Oh, sweet. It was funny because I connected before and I was talking to you guys and nobody replied. So kind of like I went to this, I was in the limbo for a little bit, I guess. Yeah, it was a full reset that I had to do here, man. So let's try this again. And I'm going to stay a little bit late just to pay for those minutes in there. But let's go back to what I had here before. Yeah, that was a weird crash because everything was just frozen, like no response from the keyboard or anything. It was just weird. Just get this to my latest. I'm gonna have to open everything here again. So personal project, ZBrush 47. So I saved this one at 9:15. So it should be like right before the class. So I don't think I lost anything. Now about the Maya file, let's see if I lost anything. Maybe just the last thing I did. The class is cursed, man. It's downhill from now. I'm so glad it started going downhill like at the last minute. Yesterday was just bugs, and then today my computer crashes. It's awesome. So let's open this up. Let's go, Maya. We can do it. All right. Yeah, Maya at work, we have all these scripts that load before, and then it takes like a really long time. This one should be a little faster than. So this one I saved actually at 9:24, so it was right before the render. So we should be good to go. Okay, so back to ZBrush here. As I was saying, this is my specular map, and I can just switch back to this. That's what caused the crash before. And so as you can see, I mean, like everything is painted with the spray, but I'm trying to get more of the dark stuff on the back. Let me just mute you guys here, okay? And then around here, right, a little bit more, like for the black stuff, it's basically like all the white stuff I'm painting here is going to turn black in the render for the color of the hair. And I'm basically what I'm doing, I'm creating different thicknesses and everything for the hair. But when it comes to the color of it, I'm actually plugging the same map for everything. So I can control like eyebrows and beard and everything with the same map. So that's basically how I'm doing now. Bless me. And then if I switch back, oh, there you go. This is not like, I mean, if I render, I tried to render like this before. And it actually is working fine. It's just like when you first open the file, it looks like that crap. That's the part of the bug that we were dealing with yesterday. So if I go to this one, into main hair, actually this is going to be the peach fuzz. So main hair, and I'm just going to rebuild this very quickly, so we don't see that crap. And then same for the goatee, rebuild, and then same for the eyebrows, rebuild. So now it looks a little better. So yeah, so let's look at the, since I was doing a render here before, I had to cancel it. I can start the render later. So what I'm doing right now, I'm actually just like, instead of like using the guides, I'm actually just like doing free form. Oh, I got some trouble going on there too. Let's just rebuild this one. So I'm gonna have to fill it up a little bit in there, apparently, because I think I shaved it too much. But yeah, all this stuff are gonna be adding some noise and everything to make sure that everything looks a lot more natural. The profile is kind of matching a little bit the reference I have, but I still have to grow this hair a little bit more and stuff like that. But enough with the silliness. Let's just look at those renders. Actually, the shaders. So let's go to my shader network here. And let's open those shaders so you guys can see what I have plugged right now. And obviously, just like, I think I should be running the render in the background here, so we can actually see what I'm talking about when I'm and render this stuff. So one thing I did here for this render, I actually imported HDRI, actually just hiding one that I had in there, but I'm actually using the flashlight combined with it. You know, it's like sometimes when you see those guys, like famous people, like in the red carpet and stuff, sometimes it's still daylight at the end of the day, but they still, the photographers still want to get like a nice shot, like a crisp shot, so they use a flashlight just like as a filling kind of light. So that's basically the effect I'm looking for here. So when I'm rendering, let's just put this one back to 6 here so it's faster. So when I'm rendering it, I'm trying to get that effect, you know, just render. Let's put it right here. This is another thing I hate about like this Maya, that you actually docks everything automatically. So I like turning that thing off. So in workspace here, under Windows workspaces, I turn off this disable, or turn on the disable docking. So I can just move in here. It's not gonna do anything now. And just like move to the side so I can actually see it. And that's basically my render right here. And then meanwhile, let's see if I can do multiple things, and if Maya allows me to. Just wait for a second. It's just loading those textures right now. So let's try that. So let's open the Hypershade and let this run in the background. And let's just frame my skin shader. And let's go through all those things here in the skin shader. So let's actually look from here. Let's get this tab here. My channel box, let's see, Control A, and let's go to the shader network right here. I think I got a way to do it. It's just like copy this tab. So scan skin, I'm gonna copy the tab so we have access to the entire thing here. And okay, so let's look at this. Base, this is basically gonna go through the entire shader network, okay? So the base, I'm using nothing here. So it's completely useless because I'm using full-on subsurface, like I said before. If you use less than 1 here for subsurface, it's gonna mix with whatever you have in the base. But in this case, we are using 100% subsurface, so ignore that. For the specular, I'm using 0.850 for the actual specular. And it's a very sharp kind of roughness, you know, it's like it's very glossy at 0.120, so it's very low. Index of refraction is 1.550. And then for the color, what I have plugged in here, I look around here, it's the map that we have, the spec map, right? It's plugged right there, the spec 22, which is basically this map right here. It's I think it's interesting because it's kind of like a visual reference for you guys. You know, it's like just to see how I'm painting those things. So it looks like this. See, it's not super fancy. It's always painted with spray, right? But it's not super fancy. And when I export those maps here, I don't export like 8Ks. I export just like 4Ks because it's not really necessary, you know, to get like super detail. But that's basically what it looks like. You know, eliminating a little bit of the reflection from under the eye bags. I was talking to Sven about this. This is going to be dependent of how you're modulating your roughness with the micro bump. Because if you have like a ton of micro bump in this area here, naturally it's going to start looking less and less shiny. The highest is the bump, the less shiny is going to look because it's going to break up the specular like in little pieces in there. So you're not going to have it. But in my case, because I have already a pretty like clear in this area, so it's pretty much like a, you know, it's like it's very low bump, so I get more shininess in there. So that's why I'm actually having to reduce a little bit and add some darkness in here. So it's all as a matter of like how you're breaking up the surface. Your specular map is going to play together with the bump height map. So you have to modulate, and basically like only doing renders you can actually see what you need, you know. So my renders, they're pretty stable right now when it comes like I know what I'm getting. So I can just tweak based on what I'm seeing. So what I'm seeing is that it was too specky, so I start removing stuff from there, right? So that's the map I have plugged in here. And let's look at the tweaks I have in the map, if I have any. I'm probably cranking the color balance. So if you look at the color balance in here, oh, actually this one is pretty normal. Yeah, I'm not even using alpha as a luminance. I'm just like using the map itself. Everything is like default. So apparently this one I didn't do anything with it. So that's the specular map, right? So let's go back here. So for the specular map, now we already went through it. Transmission, I don't have anything because it's not a transparent object. You could potentially like have transparencies if you if you want to do like at the very edge of the eyelid that touches the eyeball, but that's totally overkill. I think just like keeping that area very skinny, very thin. I think the subsurface does that job of looking translucent already. For the subsurface, first thing you have to look, it's if you're using random walk 2. And if you missed that, like there is a post from Varuna on the Facebook forum, our group, that actually mentioned where to download it from. It's actually, there is a place at the Autodesk website you can download if you're registered with Area. That's their website, the forums. You can actually download that. And then, so you get like the random walk, Arnold 3.21, if I remember correctly, 321. And then you download that one, that's the latest. That one brings this random walk 2 in here, because before you only had random walk, but this one works better for like shallowy stuff, it's like you get more detail. It looks more realistic to me. So for the scale, I'm using like 0.120, considering like a world scale. So his head is probably around like 8.5 inches tall, which is kind of like an average. And then for the anisotropy, I'm just using like 0.150. I could go lower than that, but in my case here, for my settings, is working fairly well. And of course, like it's going to start working better when you have all the maps plugged, right? If you have just like a pure model with no displacement or anything, you're going to look a little bit plasticky. But as soon as you start breaking up the surface, you're going to start getting more realistic results. So it's rendering the background there, as you can see, and we are poking around. So let's see if I don't change any values here. It should keep going. So let's do, let's go to the color of the subsurface, what I have plugged, which is, I have that little color correction that I show you guys, right? So basically what I'm doing, I'm just adding this node, that's the remap color node. We already went through this. And then basically that way I can actually control the output of the RGB of my map. So I can reduce some colors and color correct things. And the objective, just like repeating myself, it's to basically like remove some of the subsurface scattering that's baked into the albedo color. If you're using a reference, it's like a real human, you're trying to match that color, you're actually trying to match the color plus whatever subsurface is in there already, which is kind of like yellowish, a peach color, right? So in this case here, I plug this map in between the map itself. I plug this node called remap color, so I can actually reduce a little bit of the redness and then pump up a little bit of the blue and keep the green kind of like halfway. So I'm kind of like doing that right now. I'm afraid of clicking this and my render is going to cancel, but visually I think you can have an idea. I'm actually clicking, using a little dot in here right in the middle, so at 50%, so select position here, you're going to see it's going to be like 0.5, and then it's just a little bump. And of course, like it's going to be dependent of the color of your albedo, so you're going to have to compensate to make sure that's working for you. But it's just like removing a little bit of the red and then adding a little bit more of the blue, and that's about it. For the ranges in here, everything is default, so minimum at 0, input max at 1, so nothing new in there. And then in the color itself, there's some tweaks. So the color, I'm just using my albedo here. That's the latest from ZBrush. That's coming from this guy here. And it looks like this. Again, it's gonna look a little bit weird, but I'm actually using the photograph I have as a reference. So I'm compensating, it's like, because like I said, I already have a render I can go by. So I can actually tweak the color in here to match that picture, it's like as the best I can. So in that case, I had to remove a lot of the saturation from around his eyes, and then around this area here, which is like the fat deposit in there, plus the compression from the squint. And then it was surprisingly dark around this area here. The rendering looks correct, and here it looks very dark, like so the top lids, right? And so that's how the albedo looks like. And then if I go back here, to Maya. So let's see the modifications I have for my map. So if I go down here, it's RGB. So the first thing I'm doing, because he has a little bit of a darker tone of skin, he used to I think like he has some fake tans or something like that, which makes a little bit more funny to look at him, because with the contrast of the super white hair and the tan skin, it looks a little funny, right? But to do that, instead of like tweaking my map and changing the colors and stuff, I just like reduce the exposure a little bit, just like 0.1. It might not be the case for your characters in there, but just, you know, it's a way to do it, just like, you know, make everything a little darker. So for the alpha gain, nothing is new in there. Alpha offset, nothing changed. The color gain, this is by default is full white, and you can see that I'm not at full white in here. So that means that I'm using the exposure to control, make it a little dark, and I'm also using the color gain a little bit lower. But why don't I do the whole thing here? It's because this one I also have a color control. So if I click this one, you're going to see that, oh, in this case here, apparently I eliminated. So in this case, I could actually potentially just reduce this exposure a little bit more and then actually crank this one all the way down. Because before, what I had here is to add to his tan, I had slightly towards yellow. I had something around, oh man, I changed it. I just changed a value. I think it's gonna restart my render. Anyway, so I can actually cancel it. Let's cancel it. Oh, it's still rendering, but I cancel it. So now you see, like, for example, like if I want to add a little bit more of like more tan, I would go towards the yellow here. So instead of like a color gain completely white, I can just colorize it a little bit. But I'm not doing this apparently. I removed it, so that's just like white. It's just a little bit more, not white, but a little bit darker, right? So instead of like going all the way to 1, I have a 0.896. Again, it's going to be dependent on your maps as well. So that's basically what I have for the color. Effects, I don't have anything plugged. Arnold is just default stuff. I have the texture, TX textures like off. And then, so that's basically what I have for subsurface. Now, the magic to me is happening in this layer here. That's the coat. The results start looking much better when I start using this. So let's look at let's get to this guy here. Those are all our meetings recorded in there. Let's look at this F, Kris, personal projects, Stan, Winston. So many little projects in there, so little time. Images. And then let's open some of those. Let's see. Let's open all those guys here. Can I do that? Try that first. Let's try that. I'll actually open a bunch in there. So this nice spec that I'm getting that is very broad, especially here to show like, you know, the oily skin, right? Like this whole broad spec that I have here. This was not showing before. And it's working quite nicely, even under different lighting situations. I tried with HDRIs and everything, and it's working very nicely. And this is all coming from the freaking coat, like all that nice spec, right? So what I'm gonna do here, let's just go and look at it. So this the coat here, instead of like, remember what I have for the spec, right? I had, let's minimize here. I had roughness at 120, but now the roughness in here for the coat, I have a 0.400, which was kind of like a number that I thought gave me like a nice result. Obviously, if your character doesn't have like an oily skin or something like that, you're gonna have to tweak that, right? And then probably like reduce the color or something like that. And the index of refraction, same deal, 1.550. And then for the weight here, one thing I discovered, I never noticed this before, but you see like here in my color, I have plugged the color map, right, for the specular. But you see that the weight I'm controlling right here. So I have the color and the weight. But it's kind of like they kind of work the same when you're working with the spec. They kind of like don't change that much. It's kind of like the result is very similar. if you try to do the same thing with the coat, the result is much different. It's very interesting. I never noticed this. I tried to plug this map I have in here, which is basically the same map I have here. It's plugged in here. I tried to plug it as color, and I got this very interesting result. All of a sudden, his skin got like super dark. He became a black man. And then everything that was kind of like lighter in the map, it kind of like basically like the speck became like more like towards like his skin tone, right? So it was very interesting because it was an accidental thing that I did, but the result was very interesting. So you can actually, you know, like potentially use that to colorize as well, you know, like the skin itself. But I don't know if he, you know, it's like if it's in movement, if it's gonna do something funny. But at least for the still, it was very, very interesting. But so in this case here, I had to plug the color of the map as weight instead of color, right? So the color is full white. Some people like using different colors for this pack, like for example, like baking a tiny little bit of bluish in there to get a little bit of a blue kind of speck on the face. But then, to me, like I mean, like if it's outdoors, a lot of the blue is going to come from the reflection from the HDRI anyway. So I'm not using it. I'm just using pure white for now. So let's see the map I have plugged in here. So like I said before, the map I have for a spec, it's going to be this guy here, which is the spec 22. So let's see, this one here should be the same. So you see like it's the same map, spec 22 as well. Click again. Yeah, that's the one. And then if I scroll down here, RGB. So this is what I had to do in here. Sometimes the map, they don't show up too much, especially if it's a black and white map. Normally you have to use the alpha as a luminance here if it's a black and white map, so you can actually see what's going on. And then you control everything using just like those values here. Basically, like those zones are not affecting that much anymore, but the alpha gain and the alpha offset is going to control everything. And in this case, to be able to see this map, which was, again, this one here, right? I actually had to crank that number, the exposure, to about 3. So you play with that. By default, it's going to be 0. And then if you're not seeing any result, you start cranking it up. And then as you crank this, you're going to increase more and more. You're going to look more and more specky as well. So you can play with that. So in my case, for the map, the way it looks in here for me, with this type of result, intensity, I had to crank it to exposure 3 to get to that result that you see here, right? So all this stuff. So you see, like in my map, I had to actually add more speck underneath the eyebrows, like over this the eyelids in there. And like I said before, the eyelids, they look darker in here, but not by much, right? Like it adds just enough to get the darkness in there. And then if you look at my ZBrush, actually it looks quite dark, right? So yeah, you have to remember always that the subsurface scattering is gonna, you know, reduce a lot of that stuff. So that's basically what's happening in there. And then let's see what else I have. So this is covered as well. Subsurface covered, coat, sheen. I'm using a little bit of it. And again, like this is kind of like it's just to add a tiny little bit of kind of like a Fresnel effect, because this is this shader is kind of like this node is actually meant to be used like to kind of like fake the pitch fuzz. So for example, like you see from an angle, you're gonna have like a velvety kind of a cloth, for example. It's gonna add that little sheen around it, right? So basically what I'm doing is just like adding a tiny little bit of it, because I already have pitch fuzz. And if you add too much, you start getting like some artifacts, you know, it's like it looks a little weird. For emission, nothing, because it's not, you know, self-illuminated. And then for the geometry, again, this is important. Instead of using the hand-made micro displacement we were using before, like I said before, yesterday or before yesterday, I replaced that with the AI noise. That's a node from Arnold. That's the Arnold's own noise, right? And my values here are basically those that I'm using, like 7, 0, 129, 1, 0, 5, 0, 5, 0, 5. And that's about it. Vector, whatever that is. I was playing with those values here, and then I settled with whatever I found in there. So I plugged this one. So basically, like, you're gonna plug this noise, but then you're gonna see when you go back in here, now it's this noise is plugged in the bump value, right? but then you need the bump depth, because that's basically the map you are controlling how high or how low the bump is going to be, so you can actually break up certain areas more than others. So in this case here, I'm doing a similar thing. I'm using the bump height map, which in ZBrush would be equivalent to this guy here. That's the map I'm using. So the darker it is, the more shallow is going to be the depth, right? Like the bump height. So it's going to be shinier. And the lighter it is going to be more rough. So you're going to have like less specular in those areas, right? Based on the micro breakups, of course. Like I said before, this map has to play nicely with this map here, right? And then the only way to see what's actually working or not working is like by doing an actual render to actually compare things. And then you can start fine tuning, but you normally, you're gonna need a render to actually do that. So I'm using that map, and then I'm cranking it up to 5 in here to be able to see it. In your case, it might be different depending on the intensity you're using for your map. I'm using alpha as luminance as well. So alpha gain, no tweaks in here. So you're gonna see like a lot of the stuff I have plugged in here now, the way this shader is working is very different from the original one I show you guys. So that's why I'm kind of updating you guys, because I think this is one of the most successful skins I got so far. So I wanted to share exactly my settings, you know. And then effects, I don't have anything plugged in there. UV coordinates, let's see if I repeating it. No, it's actually I have 1, so nothing plugged in there either. Arnold is gonna be just default stuff, and that's about it. So we basically covered the entire shader network here for the skin. I don't think we have anything else. For advanced in here, I'm not using caustics or anything like that, and that's about it. That covers the entire skin shader. One thing that Varuna was asking was about the eye shader stuff. So let's cover that one as well since we are here. So let's go, let's click, let's get this guy here first. The outliner, and then let's get to the outliner, which should be, where's my outliner? Did it disappear? Oh, it's covered here, sorry. So let's go and look for the eyes. So I have the caruncula. Another thing we're gonna be doing, we're gonna try to build some tier lines today. Super simple stuff, like it's just to cover that as well, since we're covering everything. I was talking to Sven today, it's like, we came to the same conclusion. I think I exposed you guys to basically like almost everything. Like there's just a few details that are not covered. For example, like modeling the little tier line, but the pupil and all this stuff. At least the structure, you saw how I built it. At least you have like a visual reference of it, even though I didn't re-sculpt the iris from scratch, right? But at least you have a visual reference. But we came to the same conclusion that you basically like you got like basically all the tools I'm using to be able to create the same stuff. It's just a matter of like really putting the work on it, you know. It's like, and trying to, you know, nail like distance between pores and things like that. But in terms of techniques I'm using is basically the same stuff, you know. So let's do the iris in here first, because that's the one that I think was missing. So with the iris, man, I'm clicking everything. My chubby hands. So let's go to iris and let's see what's plugged in here. So for the iris, let's look at the shader network. It looks big in there, but it's actually not a lot of stuff. It's just like there's some little nodes I'm adding just to help me with the color correction, which is basically like the ramp RGB. I use 2 of those. So let's see how they look like in the shader. So let's get this one up. Sorry, this one up. So let's see, for the subsurface. So it's full on subsurface. So you can completely ignore this first tab here. So base, you just ignore it because I'm not using it. So for the specular, I'm using 0.6, and the roughness is not super sharp. It's kind of like a little rough. And then for the color, I'm using this color here in RGB, if you want to look, if it's easier for you. From 0 to 255, that's the values I have right there, 129, 89, 68. But that's for the brown eye, right? Brown iris. For, in your case, if you're using like a blue eye or a green eye, it's going to be different, obviously. But you see, I'm tinting the specular a little bit. Because it's always cool, like if you can kind of trick, almost like simulate a little caustic effect when I have like a colored speck. It looks like a caustic effect, like this kind of like it's producing a caustic that's colorized. But this one just helps with it, you know. It's like, to me, it adds a little bit of depth to it. For transmission, there's no transmission because it's a solid object for the iris. And then subsurface, I have random walk 2 as well. And you see like it's very, very little scale, because like all the structures are so thin in the eye, the iris. You saw like the micro details I sculpted and everything. If I crank the scale too much, it looks super like waxy. So I use like a very, very low value in here. So if you expand the subsurface color, so in the color here, I have a bunch of things plugged. So I have my my color map that looks like this, super simple. So even a little weird and saturated in there. But this is basically what I painted in ZBrush. And then I kind of like, I think I tweaked the map in Photoshop. That's why I got like this weird colors. But you're gonna see that a lot of this stuff is not being used at all, because I'm kind of like, I have some overrides here for the color of for the iris. But at least you have a visual reference of what it looks like. And of course, like, it's a very simple plane that was projected, so you can get like a perfect circle. It's much easier to control and add new maps and controls with ramps if you have something like this that's completely circular, right? So if I go down here under exposure, I'm actually bringing it down a little bit. Same thing. I mean, like, there's no formula in here. It's just a visual reference, right? Like, I render stuff, I look at compare to references. I was like, oh, it has to come down a little bit or go up. Actually, this one's going up because it starts at 0. So I'm actually cranking this exposure a little bit. So it's 0.867. Default color doesn't change. This is RGB, so I'm not using a black and white map. So I'm not using the alpha's luminance in this case. And so for the color gain, let's see what I have in here in color gain. I'm using a ramp. And this ramp here is a ramp from Arnold that's called AI ramp RGB. You can find in there. We spoke about that before. I'm just going to expand this one so you can see what's going on here. So basically what I'm doing, I'm actually trying to add a little variation in the colors. So you see how subtle those colors are? They're very, very faint, because anything you add in terms of color here, if it's too saturated, it really blows up. And when it comes to eyes, if you're trying to do like a blue eye, for example, never go for the saturated color. You always go like, try to add some blue to it, but you always go towards the grayish tones. You know, it's like desaturate the blue, because once you have this plug, it's gonna look much more rich than it is, right? So if I zoom in here, actually, let's see one of those, like you can actually see like from close up. Let's try this guy there, right? So this guy here. Let's see it from close up. You're gonna notice here, there's a tiny little bit of variation in color. You see, there's a little bit more brown in the middle right there. This one turns a little bit more towards like ochre greenish. And then you get a little bit more of that rim in there, right? So the way I'm actually creating those tones is basically using these tones here, right? So the area you saw more brown is basically this very desaturated brown. This area here is the slightly greenish stuff, and that's more towards the little edge, right? Like the little, you know, it's like the little halo you see around the eye. So basically like that little halo right there, right? So all those colors I'm controlling here, because this, as you remember, I have a transparency map in this Sclera that's actually covering the iris, but you're talking about just the iris now. So basically, like, it's gonna be the thing that's underneath the transparency, right? So of course, like, the transparency have to play with it to give you the perfect effect in there. So basically, that's what I'm doing. I'm just colorizing it, and that's using a circular type of gradient, right? So that's important to remember. So let's go back to that node and see what else we have. So that was plugged in the color gain. So if I go to the color offset now, let's see. I think I have another one here. And in the color offset, I have AI ramp RGB 4. RGB, the 4 is just a number that is attributed in there. Circular as well. And then this one here is very, very subtle. So this color here, for example, if I click on it, this one is a pure black. And remember, like, towards the left in here, that's a pupil. towards this. This is basically the sclera, right? Like it goes like from that from the iris and then pupil, iris, and then all the way to sclera, right? So around here, that's the transition between the iris and the sclera, between the brown and the white area, right? So that's completely black right here. But then when I get here, more towards the iris itself, oh, apparently I used black for everything. I think I had it tweaked before, and I think I just removed it. So in this case here, you don't even need to use that. I like having it because if I want to try to do some, you know, it's like later on, if I want to colorize this eye and try to get a little bit more like towards blue or green, I still can use this one, you know, it's like to colorize it. So it's good to have it. But in this case here, I'm not using it. It seems like it's completely black. So useless for in this case. And so that covers the textures for the iris, everything, right? And then let's see. So those are the textures. And let's see for transmission, we already spoke about it. Subsurface, that's basically what I just did. For the coat, I'm using a little bit of a coat here, very rough. So it's like the weight's like 150. And then for the color, it looks like this, kind of like orangey, like 255, 125, 67. And then here for the roughness is very rough at 0.7. And then index of refraction 1.5, can be 55, whatever. So that's basically what I'm using for coat. So this basically works as a secondary specular, right? So just a very broad one. For shin, not using anything. Emission, nothing. Geometry, I'm using bump in here apparently. So let's see, like noise 15. Yeah, that's basically a noise that's like a regular Maya noise that I'm using. So if you want to use it as well, although if I exported that map that I had from my model, it's HD geometry. My iris is HD geometry. So I could potentially add more fine detail in there and then just ignore this one completely and just have everything in displacement. But in my case, I'm using a very thin kind of noise just to break up the spec a little bit. So you can see here, it's a tiny little noise. So those are the values I have in there. You can capture the screen later. Frequency at 400. So it's very, you know, broken up, like very tiny. So those are the values. And that's about it. Like for the depth here, I'm using like 0.300 because it's so tiny, you have to crank the number a little higher sometimes. So that's it for the iris. I think we covered everything. Advanced. Oh, yeah, advanced here. I'm using caustics. But the thing is, like, the caustics would be more like in terms of the sclera, but I'm using caustics in this one here, hoping that it's gonna bounce back. You know, it's like since I have some spec in there, that things are actually gonna bounce around. Internal reflections, I don't actually need it. I can actually just turn it off. I'm gonna keep it on because it's working for me, but I normally turn off like internal reflections altogether. But you know, if you wanna recreate everything I'm doing here, so that's basically what I have right now. And that's about it for the iris. So if we go to our sclera now, so I have the cornea and sclera all in the same model, right? So you see already I have the transparency in there going on. So that's basically the main piece that has all the veins and all that crap. So this one here, base, again, if I'm using subsurface at 1, ignore base because that's not gonna affect anything. So for the specular, instead of like going for pure like 100%, I'm using like 0.750. And then for the color of the spec, instead of using a pure white, I'm bringing it down a little bit, right? So RGB 459, that's weird. Let's go through. Interesting, yeah, 459, that's a weird number. It's like goes from 0 to 255. So funny. Anyway, it's a little bit less than white, as you can tell, and they're probably like 20% less or 15% less. And then index of refraction, we spoke about that. You know, the structure, the anatomy of the eye, it has different pockets with liquid and some in-betweens and things like that. And each one of those pieces have a different index of refraction. So, but the average between like all of them, it ends up being like 136. One is 138, the other one's 134. So 136 should be an average, you know. Of course, if you want to build like a medically, you know, accurate and everything, then you're going to have to study and probably use like the correct numbers. But this one for our artistic approach, it works perfectly. And I'm using the anisotropy here for like a 0.416. That's basically what I'm using for the spec. So it's not like a, you know, the reflection, it has a little bit of an anisotropy, right? And then for the transmission, I have a map plugged in here, which is the Circular, another AI ramp float, another node from Arnold. And I'm using the Circular, and based on my UVs, I have the ramp positioned this way. But of course, like depending if your UV is gonna have it a different way. So it goes from basically like from absolutely white to absolutely black from this point on. I can even grow a little bit so you can see it. So it's almost like a complete, like it's a linear, actually. It's not even like, it doesn't have any, you know, spline, you know, curvature or anything. It's just a straight line in there. So basically this one is actually created in the ramp that blends between the iris and the Sclera, right? So this ramp right here, that's what's doing. And again, you're gonna have to have just like an eyeball, for example, and then in real time, you can actually just like tweak that curve and you can see how much it expands and how much it contracts from there. And visually, you're gonna find out like, okay, now it's too sharp. And then I was like, no, now it's too wide, and then it's not selling it. The same thing with the skin, right? Like the distance of the pores, everything is in the details, you know? It's like you have to actually tweak it until it looks just right. Eventually it clicks and then it looks right. So, and then, so that's the transmission, simply just a ramp, a circular ramp. And then for the subsurface, I'm cranking all the way to 1. And then obviously there's a lot of transparency in here. So, you know, it's like, of course, like a transparency was not going to be affected by the subsurface itself, but because everything is a single object, it doesn't hurt to just use it and get all the subsurface for the Sclera for free. The scale I'm using 150, which is a little bit higher than what I have for the skin, which is 120, if I remember correctly. And then this one is 0.1. Random walk 2 as well as everything else. And then for the subsurface color, so I have my map in there, which is like, let's see if we can see the cornea. So it looks like that, right? Some of this stuff we painted with our little lightning last time, so it's all there, the lightning stuff. And you see, like I said before, I use like those tones more towards here, but because you're never gonna see them, even if you rotate the eye a lot, you're probably still gonna see just until here. And I always try to introduce some like yellows, because look at reference, there's always like slightly yellow in those areas, you know. It's like, so I just added in there. And this is the front part of the eye, and then the back is in there because you don't see it. So my UVs, I really maximize to have more detail in the front. So for the tweaks here in the map, let's see if we have anything. We do have something. So it's again, it's a color map, so I'm not using alpha. And then for the color gain, let's see what we have plugged in here. There's no offset, it's completely black. Let's see. Yeah, it is black. And then for the color gain, we have another ramp. So it's like another ramp RGB from Arnold, circular. And then basically that's what's doing here. So basically what I'm trying to do here is to create a little bit of a very subtle effect. For example, this color here, instead of like being white, let's see if it's white. It doesn't look white. Yeah, it's a little bit less than white, actually. For some reason, it's more towards the blue than the magenta and the orange here. So it's a little bit stronger on the blue side. So maybe I'm turning a tiny little bit blue. Again, like this type of stuff I do as a test, right? So I run the render, and if I feel like based on my reference, it looks slightly more bluish, so I just add that tiny little bit. It's all like nuance stuff. And then from here is basically like, remember, like around here ends my iris, right? So the iris ends right here. So what I'm doing is just like simply adding a tiny little bit of this transition in here in the color, which is basically like making things darker towards the pupil, right? But it's just to catch that little bit right here between the transition and the white. So you're gonna see like, basically like you cannot even see here. It's just like It's just a tiny little bit of colorization here. It's turning things a little bit more on the blue side when it comes towards the outer parts, right? It's very, very subtle stuff. So that's the little ramp. I love having those ramps because you can do all kinds of tests. You know, if you feel like the eye should be more towards pink around the borders, you can just click in here and add like a slightly pinkish. Always very desaturated, of course, because those things are going to multiply with your actual color. So if you have this as a color gain, you have to make sure you use like the saturated colors, right? Don't go too crazy with it. And then that's about it for this. Let's go back here. So subsurface is covered. We spoke about the transmission. We spoke about the what else? The specular, right? So let's go coat. The coat I'm using 0 here, so ignore it. There's no effect in here, so no coat. And then geometry, there's nothing in there. There's no bump map or anything like that. So ignore that. And then here I am using caustics and no internal reflections. So that's basically what it is for the eye, right? Just remember that if you have a transparent object, it can be anything. For example, like even the carunculus, right? Like the little things right there in the internal part of the eye. You're not gonna have like a solid because we're using the transparency thing. So we can actually, you can actually turn those objects transparent as well. And you have to define those things in the attribute editor. So if I have the corner of the eyeball here selected, remember to go to your attributes and just look around here in the shape. Look for Arnold. And first thing, this is gonna be by default turn opaque, right? All objects, when you create any object in Maya or bring something from another place, it's always opaque by default. So if it's transparent, for example, like the glasses or the Scleras, you turn off this checkbox in there. Otherwise, it's not gonna render with transparency. And that covers it. We spoke about the shaders I already have for the hair, so we're not gonna be talking about that today. I didn't change that. And then we can try to do some modeling here. That's just like to look at how I model the tier lines, which is not complex at all. So first thing you're gonna do, I'm just gonna keep visible just let's see, the cornea. And then this one here, yeah, the cornea. It's a little messy right now, I have to do that. So if I have some, let's look at the caruncula as well. So let's do that and just make this one visible. Okay. And you guys are free to ask questions if you want. We're right at that time. So the first thing I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna just like do this. I'm gonna add everything to a layer. So let's try that. Let's add, if you click this little box in there, you have access to the layers, right? So let's look at where are my layers? Let's switch to my classic, so I'm not lost in there. So those are my layers. And then I selected both the eyeballs. It all depends. For example, like this, I never did before. I was talking to Sven at work, and maybe something I should do, but I don't do, which is actually cover the caruncula as well with the tier line, because it makes sense, right? Like I would have to go and it would go over because you want that little hint of speck in there. That would make sense. In this case here, I'm gonna ignore it for now, but I think it makes sense that you actually do around it. So in the ideal situation here would be like you covering the entire thing. See, my caruncula is still a little funky. It's not like matching perfectly in there because this entire area here goes completely transparent. So this is not even showing. But if I want to be very precious about it, then it would be nice to actually get it tighter against the eyeball, right? So let's do this without the carunculus for now. And I'm gonna just try to fill up those areas. So I'm gonna select both the eyeballs and the face. And if I do this, if I just create a new layer here. So now I have a layer that I can turn on and off, right? And then let's switch to this little guy here. That's the model toolbox in Maya, which is very, very cool actually. And then you can do like a quad drawing here. So first off, we're gonna select everything. Select those guys. And then there's a button here, this one here, the little magnet that turns, oh, actually it's not gonna allow me to do for both at the same time. So let's start with this one here first. So I'm just gonna click that. So that one is basically, it's live now. So I cannot select this object anymore. If I switch to wireframe, you're gonna see it's green right now, right? So it's live. That means everything I draw here is gonna snap to it. So I'm gonna start with a quad drawing here. And I'm gonna do something like, let's start very simple. And I normally don't do like super precise, like, or super high poly. You can later, if you want to, you can subdivide further, you know, especially if you're doing animation stuff. But in my case here, I don't really need it. So I'm just gonna do something like, can go even, you know, bring a little bit further down like that. So let's start like marking it first. Let's do one here. Another one there. And again, if you're rigging things, right, like this bulge in here is gonna have to actually, you know, follow it, right? So the tier line is gonna have to follow it. So it's all gonna be a part of the rig. But in this case here, we are working with the still. And although it's not like in the final eye position for me, I'm gonna build it as it is. And then later I can just adjust those and snap them back. So in terms of density, I would not go much further than this. You know, it's like very low poly like that, right? So now it's snapping there, right? So now instead of like using this guy here, let's switch to, oh, did I just, I forgot to actually create the, let me see if I can do it. Interesting. Let's try again. Oh, quad draw. Oh, no. Okay. So it's there. I just have to keep going. So let's do edit and then redo this. So Control Y. Let's see, Control I. Just refill it. Okay. So I have the quad drawing there. Let's try to do this. I'm gonna uncheck this guy here. Actually, I'm gonna do the other side too, right? I have to do both sides. So let's do that here. I'm gonna start just with the bottom part, and then we can build the top and then basically like merge them together. I'm gonna go here. You can go a little bit further if you want, but I like around that position in there is good. So something like that. And now I'm gonna unfreeze it. So click that little button there, the magnet. And let's do this with those guys. So select the eyes and I'm gonna click them again. Actually, I have to do one by one. So click that one, make it live. And now quad draw again. And I can just go and click in the very intersection, right? Like you're gonna do your best to just get that little intersection right there. When I get to the eyeball, it's gonna look a little funny in there, right? But we're just getting the best we can here. I'm gonna keep rotating here so I get more like towards the normal direction. So that's the first row, right? So if you never use Maya, I mean, like this quad draw here, this little toolbox is pretty cool because you can just like, now you have everything marked with quad draw. Just press shift and you're gonna start seeing those little polygons. So if you click shift and you keep drawing this, if you're lucky, you get all of them. In this case, you're gonna get all of them. Or you can just go like one by one and just like shift. Why is it not doing that one? Ah, interesting. Why is it skipping it? Interesting. Huh, I never noticed that before. You guys never seen this? It's just skipping it. That's so weird. Let's try, before I do this, let's just try to unlock it and see if it does anything different. What? Oh, there's something funny happening. Kind of like, what? Yeah, I'm clicking it. It's kind of like unchecking instantly. Any key got stuck or something? That's so weird. Man, bug. Man, we are playing since yesterday, huh? Things are just not quite working. This was supposed to be very simple, and I use quad draw all the freaking time. Anyway, so let's see if I do a little different than this. So there's always an option. Before quad draw existed, there was something else. So let's make this one live and waste some time here. And so under mesh tools, let's see if it's the same place there. Under mesh tools, you have create polygon in here. So you can also use that one. So you can just do this. I'm gonna do it like the not so pretty way. Do this, and then I can now append stuff. So under this, let's see, it's going to be a different spot, I bet, because append polygon. So under mesh tools, append polygon. So I'm going to go from that one to the next one. Oh, wrong direction. Okay, append. Well, I think I have append here somewhere. This guy, create polygon, append face. Okay. So go from that direction. So I start from the top. All right. Here. But that quad draw thing, what about that, man? That's weird. I freaking model transformers with that, man. Oh, man. I model thousands of parts with that shit. No, it just doesn't work. So weird. Well, granted, my 2019 is the first time I used, right? Like in this class. And that was a little risky. Never used it before. So yeah, you get the point here. So it's just like, it's a very simple geometry. In this case here actually was built flipped. So I'm just gonna flip it back. So that now it's facing the right normals. And then now if I snap this guy here. So
and Kris, you would think they're gonna fix that viewport 2.0 over a couple versions, but it gets worse. It gets worse.
Man, it's amazing.
Unbelievable.
It's amazing what they do. I'm so pissed at Maya right now.
Me too, man. Every day.
Oh shit. So yeah, I'm gonna do it now. Basically, like I'm gonna snap. You got the way I do it, right? Like just like turn this one live. Now it's the eyeball is live. So you're just gonna go and then do the same deal for those guys. That's the thing, right? Like we have to work with this software like professionally, right? We have to create stuff within timelines and deadlines and everything. And you would think that everything would be rock solid, but
yeah, no.
But it's not. I mean,
hey Kris, the only thing you could try is like switch to. Do you still have an option for legacy viewport in Maya 2019?
No, we don't. They removed it.
Bravo. Well done, Autodesk.
Yes. There is a guy actually, he posted a little article. I think, I don't know if it's a video or something. I saw somewhere that he says there is a little environment variable you can actually change to return. Yeah, to get it back. So
yeah, because at work we have that. We have the option to switch to legacy, and I'm just bouncing back and forth between viewports depending on where I have more issues and errors.
Yes, it's amazing, man. That you have like, it's a crash course.
Totally.
So now basically what I did here was super simple, right? Like just snapped to the bottom and then snapped to the eyeball. And now I have this little, super simple geometry that looks like this, which is like, a little, almost like 90 degrees, right? And I was not paying attention when I was doing it, but it would be ideally going like towards the normal, right? Like the direction would have to be something like this. But you get the gist of it, and you can do it better when you're doing like carefully in there. So basically, the line, that's the way I created mine. And then in this case here for this guy, probably tonight or maybe like tomorrow, I actually gonna do differently. I'm gonna do the same process, but I'm gonna go around the entire thing, and I'm gonna add like to the top as well. So I'm gonna do like the full thing with the tier line, and I might actually consider snapping to the carbuncle as well. So if I do it, you guys gonna see it. But for just to show what I have in my actual scene in here, let's go back to this guy. Let's see, Control A. Oh, actually, let's go to my outline. So let's get back to the, why you have two outlines? Let's see, Caruncula tier line. So tier line 1 and then the other one as well. So this is basically what I have modeled. Remember what I said before? I added that little thing that was actually hoping that would help with, you know, with the Caruncula in there, but it didn't do much. So I just like, I decided to remove this next time I do it, and I'm just gonna go around with it. But you see, like, this is exactly what I was doing. It doesn't match the eye perfectly because this was basically like imported from another model, right? So I still have to do the matching here, but since I'm gonna be building it again, I'm just gonna be completely destroying this thing. But it's basically like if I remove the subdivision, that's what it is. It's exactly what we just built, right? And then for the texture itself, let's look at the shader and texture for this. Let's look at here. So let's go to my modeling and then UV editor. And it's super simple. You see, like, this is the length of the, this is the entire UDIM I have. And it's actually using most of it in terms of length. And then there's a noise applied in there. So if you do something similar like that, if you use your, you know, you can put the entire thing, if you did the whole circle, right, the whole perimeter, you can actually add the whole thing, but making sure to use the area as much as possible. And then you can use the same settings I have, which are those. So if you go through the material here, you're gonna see what I have. So I have the base here at 0, not using it, like, right, everything is 0. Specular, I'm using the 760, and then roughness is very, very sharp, super glossy, so 0.040. Index of refraction 1.6, could be like 166 like I had before for the eye. For some reason I tweaked that one, but you see, like, everything I do is like, it has a logic to it, but it's not like a, I used to be very anal about matching every single value every time. You know, it's like I would have like, man, if it was 66, I have to do 66, or otherwise not gonna do it. And over time, I just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna do more organically. And then I tweak those values like close enough. But if I can be like, if I really want to nail those things, I would be like for like 166 because it should be similar refraction, like similar to the cornea. But in this case here, you see, like, it's not like, I'm not that anal about it anymore. Transmission, it's 100%, so basically like completely transparent, no maps or anything. I did in the past though, I did a little test that you can try as well. If you want to make sure that this is like a perfect blend between like the eyelid and then a perfect blend with the eyeball as well, this is a good trick you can try. You can make this, the UV completely flat. So you make like completely horizontal, right? Make a line like that. And then you can use a ramp that you can actually use that ramp plugged into your geometry tab, right? Like if you go to your geometry here, and you can use that in the opacity here. So basically, like, instead of like making simply like just the transmission disappear, you're gonna make the object plus the reflections and anything else is gonna disappear with it. So you can create a perfect blend. I think I have this set for Dick Smith, I believe. So you're gonna get like the specular to catch you just in the middle in here. And then in that case, if you're gonna use like a transparency, you can actually grow it and get a little bit higher in here, you know, a little bit more spread out in here. It might be an interesting alternative, you know, it's like just to create this perfect blend, but just as a suggestion, of course, I'm not using it here. Subsurface, nothing, right? Because it's just transparent. Coat, nothing. And then emission, nothing. Shin, nothing. Geometry, yes. Geometry is there where we have the noise plugged. So the noise in here, in my case, is just a regular noise from Maya. It's not the noise from Arnold. And then those are my settings. 0, 1, 0, 0, 9, 1, 2.812, 3, 1, and 12 for frequency. Obviously, like, you're gonna get more, you know, it's like more frequency here, like if you keep like cranking it, right? But in this case here, because I'm using the full area, oops. Let's see if I can undo that. So it's 12. So that's basically like, because I'm using the full UDIM, that's the number I got to. It's just, if I render this one, let's see. If I can just do a render of just this piece. Let's see if I find my lights in here. And let's just unhide it. It's gonna look very weird because it's gonna try to refract the background. But at least you can see how Let's just save that one. Store. It's gonna look weird, but at least you can see the amount of noise I have, you know. And it's interesting because with this light, you get just that little hint. You see right there? Just a tiny little hint. And same with the caruncular. Remember, I had that little the tier line that was actually going around here is not even showing. That's why I saw like it's completely pointless. So I'm just gonna keep around the perimeters. So that's gonna help. And it catches like very nicely from all angles. You see that one in there? Looks pretty nice too. And then from here, you know, it's just that little hint. And if you try to do it completely flat without bump, you don't get the same effect, you know. So that's why I'd rather use a little bit of a bump. So let's see. You got lost in there somewhere. It's so tiny. Let's see, right there. You can see like with the refraction in the back, it's gonna look a little weird. You see like the bump is just to break up, so it's not like a complete perfect mirror. And that's what helps with the, you know, but the light hits it. So, did I forget something about that? Let's see. I thought I forgot one thing about this. Maybe not. Yeah, the caustics, right? I'm using caustics and internal reflections. And then I think that's about it. I think that's about it for it. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna be doing a little bit of tweaking here so I can get some of my work done as well. And you guys can feel free to just ask stuff. Like I said before, I found some pictures of this guy from Profile, and it was very helpful actually. So I'm gonna be showing you guys that I actually had to make his nose slightly longer and bring his ears back a little bit. By the way, the ears are, I think I'm gonna have to do some work today as well. I can actually do some work now. But yeah, I think it was good to cover all the shaders again, so there's no doubt about it. And you have basically like a base for everything in there other than teeth. But most of our characters, we don't have teeth, so I'm not gonna go through that. But eventually, if you guys need any, you know, you can ask at our little forum in there. I can actually post whatever settings I have for the teeth. So let's do a little, let me pull my reference, which I think, let's see if I can find it here. Where is it? Reference. I found a bunch of pictures like where Varuna actually, he pointed me to Getty Images, and he does have a lot of stuff in there. So I got this one that was kind of like a profile a little bit from the back, which is really cool. There's this one here. It's more like that. This other one, a little bit more from the top. Some of them are very low res, but some are very good. So this one here was a good one. He has a very legit smile. I would be smiling too if I was in front of those ladies. Especially that lady. It's kind of cute. And then someone comes like, oh, it's his daughter. Like, dang it. Anyway, not being disrespectful here with old men. But yeah, I found this one here. So I started to, you know, match some of that stuff, at least try to. Proportion-wise, it looks like it's smaller in his face. So I have to see what's working for me here. It looks like there is a little bit of less distance between this area and the nose, you know. So I have to see if that works out for me. And then the ears, I mean, like he has this very strange shaped ear that I'm gonna have to try to match. So let's do some work on that. Maybe if I can just keep the ears visible, maybe it's gonna be helpful. And then turn off everything. Right there. Let's just, I'm gonna do it in symmetry actually, because I wanna reuse whatever I can. I don't remember if it allows you to do symmetry with, yeah, it have to be completely unhidden. So let's do that. Posable symmetry, because I want to make sure I'm actually sculpting stuff. Although the other ear looks completely different from this one. I'm just going to move it to the side here. That's basically the reference I'm using right now, which is very low res. But I'm going to try to block that here. Let's do some sculpting, man. I don't even even remember like last time I did some sculpting here in front of you guys. It was just like, I think the eyeball, the eye bags are the only thing we actually did in class. And the pores, of course. The pores is a big one. But it would be nice if I have more time exercising here too. So let's try to get the shape correct. He has like those, this area here is very thin. I'm gonna pull it out, make it a little bit thinner. And then this is a tricky one because this is out like that in his ear. I have to pull it out. And then to blend those areas, sometimes you have to fight them, right? But with clay build up, it's very easy to just like blend those areas and remove anything that was in there. So I can use like Alt and then back to normal, and you can just like completely eliminate those things, because it seems like his ear has that almost like blended. It's it looks funny. It's almost like when you fracture your ears, like especially those jujitsu guys, right? They have like all fracture ears, and it's crazy because they have to drain those from time to time. It's very weird. I don't know if you guys ever watched it. They get like a doctor or someone in the gym, just like puts a needle in there and just drains like all this liquid. I was like, oh, that's so gross. But yeah, you have to drain your ears when you have like cauliflower ears from jiu-jitsu. And then he has this interesting little pulling here. So it has an angle, which is very interesting. So this part here is almost like it's part of that form. So he breaks up the silhouette right there. And then he has a little dimple. Let's get that. Oh man, why is my smooth not doing a better job here? It's because my, yeah, it's because of my topology is not that high in there. I can try to get some of that. And see from the back, of course. Any pictures I can find of the guy from the back is gonna be helpful. And this one, you see like the topology is not really helping in there. But I can go to the highest resolution later and just like tweak that in the highest and make sure that everything is completely smooth right there. Every time you use this smooth brush, it's gonna pop out anyway. So let's just dig this area here a little. Yeah, every time I use this smooth, it pops everything back. So I'm gonna just keep this the way it is. And then reduce this here around, yeah, this smooth around 20, something like that. And he has this very interesting, like normally when I sculpt something here, I normally do like a, you know, if I want to get those forms in here, I normally try to do something more like that, right? To get those two forms split. But then in his case, he has a very tiny one around here. It's almost like a little circle. Very cute. So it has this one around here. Really big again. I can actually smooth it. And then he has a shorter one right here. I'm gonna try to go inside. Sometimes it's very tricky to get this area, depending on your topology, of course. If I had it connected, that would be much easier. In this case here, it's always a little tricky to get there. So let's get this one down. And then I'm gonna stretch it out a little bit. So let's go higher a little bit. And get this one a little lower. And I'm gonna bring this area a little bit down as well. I think potentially what I can do here, let's see if it's gonna work. Let's try that. I can actually force things. Yeah, it's gonna look better. Just bring it down here. And it goes lower a little bit. Let's start with that. Now my intensity for smooth is very, very low. Okay, 16, 20, okay. At this area here, a little bit deeper. And we're gonna pull this towards the end. Sometimes if I need a little bit more thickness, I just use a very mild inflate brush, right? You have to be very, very careful with it. Otherwise, it really blows things up. So intensity of 1 or 2. Let's try 2. Just add a little bit thickness in there. And then here, let's see how his, yeah, something like that. Something deeper. And the position of the ear here, ear holes, like it's way wrong in my model. So I would pull it completely towards, let's actually mask this. I'm gonna have to bring it more under this little structure here, which is basically protecting it, right? So something like that, it disappears right there. And then this can come lower a little bit. And again, I'm doing all of this stuff here and I'm not even seeing what's going on the other side. It's probably a mess. Yeah, it's pretty messy. But some of that stuff I'm gonna be using and some I'm just gonna be resculpting anyway, because they are very asymmetrical ears. I just wanna use some of the similar structures since it's the same person, right? Like you're gonna have like similar structures, but then just like the major form is gonna be completely out of place. I'm gonna get that around there. I'm gonna puff up this area here a little bit. And then there's another picture I saw of him that actually I can see those forms better. But it depends, it goes from person to person. Sometimes you have like a very definitive dimple in here, like a wrinkle that forms around right there. But because my picture is so low resolution, I mean, look at that thing, you cannot see anything. I'm gonna try to find one here that has a little bit more resolution for it. Let's try that, let's see. You can find one, like it's a profile with a decent resolution, which is always tricky. This one's gonna be low as well. Although 1.5 megs, let's see. Interesting. Yeah, that one I can see that actually is deeper. Like that. Oh, see, that's the thing, that's the puzzle I like to work with. Because you can actually see all those things from picture to picture. And then you put together the pieces of the puzzle. That's the puzzle I mention all the time. That's my favorite part, actually, to the chase. Like, okay, I found another piece of the puzzle. We're like, yeah. I'm gonna bring this one a little deeper. Like that. And then this little guy comes a little bit more towards this. So it has this interesting forms in there. That's the thing, you know, it's like we oversee a lot of stuff, you know, it's like if you're just, of course, like blocking your models. I see like some modelers, they crank like one model every day or something like that, right? And the difference between a blocked up model that's just like a sketch that you just like flush and have like to look pretty, you know, like put some pretty render and everything, and something like this that's just like careful work everywhere, you know, it's that's the thing, it's like it's a different type of thing. I love doing both, by the way. I had a series of models like I posted in 2017, if you remember, like the, you know, the were hyena and then all those guys, and that little sketch of who's the guy? Hitchcock, right? All those guys, like all like very, very quick stuff. And I love doing that. But I mean, like it's hard to compare the amount of work that goes into making something that, you know, it's like, you can tell. I mean, like you look at the work, you know, it's like all the spores placed by hand. You can tell that this was not done like in the afternoon, right? It was, yes, it was actually took a couple of nights or whatever. And but I really love doing both. Like it's so freeing to just like do sketches too. But I got into this loop of doing all those complex portraits these days. And I'm gonna be in this loop for a little while because I have another 2 classes lined up. And then I have probably October and September. October, November, I'm gonna try to teach again. If my energy is good, if I have enough energy, I'm gonna teach again. Because I kind of mentioned that I could be, you know, doing this for a while. That's very helpful for our situation right now. But at the same time, I don't think I can do the same price. I think you guys in this June and July class are the last ones getting this $800. You know, I think I'm gonna have to raise because, like I said, it's not quite like a fly on the wall. It's more like a tutorship because I'm doing like all kinds of tutorials and things. So I think it's worth more than that. So I'm gonna be raising a little bit. Raising a little bit to $4 grand. No, probably gonna set up like to around $1,000 or something like that. Not more than that. Still want to make sure that's somehow accessible. And then you guys can go out there and say like, oh man, yeah, it wasn't worth it. I mean, like we paid $800, but we felt like ripped off, dude. I don't think you should do it for $1,000. Crazy. I'm always fascinated how complex the forms are in the human body. You know, you overlook all this stuff. You look at the nose, and you're just like, oh yeah, it's just like 2 nostrils, and then there's this piece here, and then this piece there, and then you're done. But man, if you really start looking at stuff, you see all kinds of interesting forms. You know, and we get too caught up like with the human anatomy when it comes like to the body anatomy, right? Like we memorize all those names, and then just triceps and biceps and, you know, dorsal, yeah, all kinds of stuff. And then when you look at the face, I mean, like you overlook it, and then you kind of like, you know, make like some generic faces sometimes. Some artists, they're very good at creating very original faces from the get-go. Like they have the gift of really like creating some interesting stuff. I don't quite have that. I'm pretty good at observing things, but like coming up with like idealized, yeah, I would say like some creature stuff, yes, but like humans, like idealized humans, not so much. I think I can do well if I try, but it's not like my forte, I guess. But some people, they really know their facial anatomy, and I was like, that's very fascinating to me because it's not easy. Get the relationships correct. And it's the first thing, right? Like when you look at something, if it's off, I mean, like you can tell straight away. You don't need to be a specialist. So this is a little bit shorter than him. And I just noticed because I have a profile picture now. And it's a little bit less bumpy here too. Yeah, depending on the topology, you're going to be fighting those things. For example, you're going to see the way my topology is in there. It's kind of pinching in here. And to get rid of that is a nightmare. In this guy here too, look at that. It's like really, really crossing over. Let me smooth it out, make sure I don't have any crap in there. Because anything you have in terms of intersection, right? Like remember that Arnold is going to try to read the surface, and he's going to end up like creating some artifacts. You know, you can get like some dark areas that are unexpected. So the more you can, you know, avoid those things, the better. You're just going to try to eliminate that completely. And then you just go from there, like just really re-sculpted. Yeah, it's looking very weird. You see, like it's pulling all the way up. So it's better if I can just like remove that completely. I'm completely destroying it, but it's better if I fix it now than cry later. Yeah, now it's starting to actually unfold it. Yeah. I think it was from the projection, you know, when I had some stuff projected, it got really weird. Yeah, now I'm gonna have to redo that entire form in there. Anyway. Right there, and then let's try to find a reference for this bottom area here. Because in his case, he has a little bit more shape like that. I have one of those ears, you know, like that this is connected. I noticed that like a couple of my friends have it. So I don't have this little guy dangling like that. Everything's connected, so it connects from here to here. It's very weird. And I noticed some friends have the same. I heard like people who have that are all conspiracy theorists. So I read in the internet, so it must be true. Okay, let's look for another reference. It's starting to look a little bit more organic now. It has more character than we had before, for sure. That's the thing that's like, it's a peripheral kind of detail, right? Like an ear. Something that you're not gonna go and look straight away, right? You're gonna see, like you're gonna pay attention to the eyes, right? The windows of the soul. And then your eyes gonna start wandering around. And then eventually, if your eyes land in a spot that looks like, yeah, it looks like an actual ear, you know, it's like it has some character in there. It's not, doesn't look like a generic kind of thing. Then it kind of like the realism starts selling, you know. For example, like if you look at the renders I had before, those guys, let's see one with the ear here. The ear is super simple. See right there, like it's not selling it. It doesn't have color or anything like that. But then the focus is going to be always in the eyes, right? Like if normally, like you're going to look at the eyes first, and then everything that's around it, right? So the eyes look good, and then okay, the eyebrows, yeah, they look good, but they could have like maybe a little bit more of a blending here to look more realistic. And then you're going to start wandering around, right? So like you're probably going to catch some of the highlights, look at the nose, and then go down. Basically, going to read this way. And then for the last thing you're going to notice, probably like the ears, right? But it's there. So if you have something that looks realistic, that once you know, it's like any person just like look at here, and then all of a sudden like, okay, I can believe this is an actual person, or it's really well done, like to the point that, you know, yeah, it's very realistic. Then you start wandering around other parts, right? And then of course, like everything starts playing a role, like the clothes, like the way you build the folds and everything is gonna sell it. And then the ears and all the secondary stuff, like the hair you start building right now, then you're gonna start looking at the frame of the face, right? Everything that's around it. And then if you go this route of doing realistic stuff, you have to make sure that you nail every single one of them, right? Or at least you cheat very well. So that's why like I leave those things for last, like, you know, it's like ears, and then gonna rework like the folds of the neck. I noticed that in his neck, this fold actually is not here. It's actually lower. It's around here. So I'm gonna be working on that as well, redoing it. But it's gonna be about that. Is there anything I missed, guys? Like when it comes like to the content itself, like I was wondering, like I did talk about all the shaders. Basically, I broke down everything. All the passes for the color. I show like examples of how I paint my stuff in ZBrush. I did like I show like the iris, the model for the eyeball itself, like with the veins and everything. You explain how I did the veins, and, you know, little tricks that I'd learned like with lightning and things like that. And then the render, we went through render settings to get like the same stuff that I'm getting. A little bit about the HDRI, right? Like I pointed you to the HDRI and how to assign the HDRI. So we went through the maps. So we exported displacement maps from ZBrush, and the color maps and everything. We went through the process of plugging them in Maya, setting up like the attributes of each one of the objects for transparency or no transparency. And basically, like, I think you covered the entire thing other than, you know, post processing, like, you know, it's like to get the renders to shine and look nicer at the end, which we should cover tomorrow. And then the caruncle I actually show like the other day, which is basically like my model of the caruncle. It's very simple like that. And he has this, let's see if I have the texture here. So that's basically the texture I have. It's very old, right? But it's mostly transparent. And I'm recolorizing the whole thing in Maya anyway. I'm turning this color into something else, and the bump is going down. And so at this point, it's almost like it doesn't look anything like that. So I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna at some point redo this caruncula to actually look nice with a sharper, much more detailed veins and everything. And then, you know, I show you guys how I'm doing the transparency, the UV positioning, which is basically like I'm actually turning this way or upside down, I don't remember, in my UV layout. So I can actually use a ramp to just make like a perfect ramp, like transition between this and the eyeball itself. I think, yeah, I pretty much covered everything. Like XGen, I show you guys how to use the interactive. You felt my pain yesterday, yeah, with all the crashes, and that's to expect about XGen. Like I said before, it's a amazing tool. You know, it's like the amount of features, it's pretty incredible. But it's far from being stable. You know, it's like something you can actually trust at all times. And then I explained as well how I created it. I created my different areas, right? Like for separating things like the beard from the mustache and things like that. So it's easier for me to control. Shading, we went through the shading as well. I think we covered like pretty much everything, you know. And then what we didn't cover is basically like a variation of everything we did here. So if there is anything left, it's basically like, okay, the techniques are basically the same, you know, so you guys should be able to work with that. But I guess at this point here is that thing, you know, it's like it's the amount of work you're gonna put in your own models right now. From this point on, you know, it's like that's really gonna show what you can do with all those new techniques, you know. The great advantage of this class is to have like experienced guys like you. So it's not like everything is going over your head. A lot's going to go over your head because my pipeline is completely different from anything else. But in terms of like being familiar with the tools, you know, it's like ZBrush and Maya, at least that most of you guys have, you know. But it's just a matter of like now putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, you know. It's like, okay, I remember that Kris spoke about that stuff. Let me look at the videos and see where exactly that was. And now I have this model here. I'm going to start, and then I can try to use that, you know. And yeah, I hope the whole thing is being useful for you guys so far. And I think it is. It's being very useful for me to discover new things, and happy to share with you guys, you know, it's like all the new techniques and shader stuff that I'm discovering. So yeah, it's been a blast, man. And I'm gonna miss you guys. It's nice like yapping here in front of you guys and pretending I know what I'm doing. Let's see. Let's see if I can find any other ear reference, man. It's being hard. See, like this one here is a very different ear. It doesn't have that little lump in there, the fracture. It might be actually from when he was younger. Maybe he didn't have that fracture before. Look at that. That one doesn't show that much, right? It's a younger version of him. So maybe he got that, like, I don't know, maybe he practiced jujitsu, I don't know. You see his ear in there looks kind of okay. Doesn't look like so lumpy. Then you look at him here, he looks a little bit more blown up. Interesting. Yeah. That's another thing, right? Like see like this one here? It's pretty big in there. And then look how asymmetrical they are, right? This one's kind of like open. So we're gonna have to do that. Yeah, very hard to see. Let's try to use that one a little bit. Hello?
Oh, you can hear me?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, great. I wanted to ask, do you do anything special with your camera? Like instead of focaling different, or
I'm sorry?
do you do anything special with your camera?
Oh, with the camera. Yes, let's go through that actually. That's a good point because I didn't speak about that. My camera here, the way I have it, it's completely is a default, right? So I'm not using anything fancy. This is the render you saw me doing just now. It's the same render space like I'm posting online. But there's one thing you can do here, which is if you want to go and do like a realistic render straight away from Maya with the depth of field and everything, we have to cover that. That's a good point. And we have some time, so let's cover that. So let me just hide all this hair, which is really bothering me at this point. Like every time I open, I have to redo it, just reconstruct it. Again, it's not affecting the renders. When I render, they render just fine, but it really bothers me visually. So let's try this, start off, and then let's turn off all the groom. What? Disappeared from there? Oh my, I love you so much. The tab, you completely obliterated the tab. Anyway, I can hide the hair from here.
He looks like Ringo Starr sometimes.
Sometimes, right? Well, man, I think they're all Jewish, you know. I'm not saying anything, but just saying, you know. I have a nose that is similar to that, and I know that we have a part of my family is Jewish. I'm not, but so I'm pretty sure there's some relation in there. Let's see. So let's see, like I have this camera that doesn't have anything fancy attached to it, right? But if I go to the attributes here, a couple of things you can actually add. If you go to perspective in here. First off, like normally what I do, I create like a tiny little piece. Let's do this now. So I'm gonna create like a polygon, like a sphere polygon, very tiny. I'm gonna make it very small. And I normally use this one as a reference, like a visual reference, right? So I'm gonna make it tiny like that. And I normally put one like really close to the eyeball, really close to where I want. For example, like even like touching the iris sometimes, right? So I'm gonna have around here. So you see like it's right in the middle of the iris right there because I wanna read the iris, not the external part, right? So that's the middle of it. So I create one for here and I just do another one for, oops, for there. So those guys here, normally I name them, you know, for example, like DOF right, and then DOF left, right? So now in my, what you can do, you can actually go to the display here and you have like this heads up in display. And then you're gonna see here, object details. Then when you click object details, it says distance from camera. So you get that number in there, right? So when I'm doing like trying to calculate and create like my depth of field, to make sure that I have the right values and everything. So let's just switch here. This. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm just gonna, let's see like what's my keyframe I have. So let's pretend I wanna do like a depth of field from this side here, right? So I have the left selected, this one, and I get the distance of 82.326 right there. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna select the camera again, and I'm gonna just copy this tab. So copy tab, copy tab. So I have like a standalone here. I'm gonna switch back to Arnold. And then under Arnold in here, now we have the enable DOF, right? The reason why I'm unplugging this tab in here is that now I can actually select the little DOF object and it's gonna switch to the attributes in here. So I'm gonna lose the focus in the camera, but now I have the tab in here, I can use both at the same time. So I can actually refer to those values in there. So I can just go to focus distance and I can match that, 82. 0.326. And I can just like keyframe it. Right click, set key, right? So now I know that for the next frame, if it's in a different position, I'm gonna have to actually tweak it and then save another frame, right? And do render the sequence afterwards. So right now, let's see if you do a quick render. Let's try that. I mean, make this very small so we can actually see that very quickly. So let's do like a render very low res, like 500, something like that. And then here at 6. Let's do a quick render like that. Something like that. And at this point, I have no DOF, right? So let's see how those values work. Another thing you can do, you can always go to this, like to go to Google, and then you can just say here, Arnold 5, let's see, DOF, something like that. So if you click this one, it's going to go straight to the first link, cameras. And then that it breaks down like all the examples in here with the illustrations and everything. So you're going to have the exposure in there in the camera. By default is 0, but you can actually compensate it just like a regular camera, right? The filter map is a very useful one. If you want to create like a vignette effect, you can actually plug a map in there. We're going to do this. And then, oh, there's this blur length in here. It's pretty cool. You can generate this old school effect in there, just like by generating an animation with the blur delayed. And then you have the DOF, right? And then you have all the settings for the DOF, like what's the difference between like having the aperture blades a little bit smaller or bigger. You know, you get more of like a buttery kind of effect or more triangular, right? And then the aperture size, how much blur you're gonna get. So it's all, you have all kinds of examples in there, you know. You can remap, like add like a more like a fisheye kind of lens. But let's just do some tests here with our render. Let's just hope it doesn't take too long. It's just like, I think loading the textures right now, that's why it's taking long, but it's gonna be faster soon. So the things I play with, he looks so funny without the hair, man. He looks like a mole. So funny, he's like a Uncle Faster or something. So now I have no depth of field in here, but now we know that we are setting depth of field right there in the eye. So I'm gonna click depth of field, and I'm just gonna crank this aperture here a lot, just so you can really blur so you can see what's going on. So let's put like, let's try like 2 here, so you can really see. It's gonna be super blurry. It's gonna be like a miniature, right? So basically like this one controls the amount of blur. So for example, like if it's a macro photography, right, you're gonna probably have a lot of blur in there. So you can, you know, if it's a tiny thing, you can really crank it. All the other stuff, I'm gonna let you guys to actually look through those documents online and see what they do. But one that I use very often is this filter map here to create the vignette effect. But of course, like you can do in Photoshop as well, you know, it's like you can do it very easily in Photoshop. But just so you know how it works, you can just go to Maya, for example, and you just do like let's see, a 2D texture. You can just do a ramp. See, it's already plugged in there. You can see what's going on with the ramp. So I'm just gonna expand it. Let's see. Let's just pause it for a second so you can give me update me to that. So that's the ramp right there. And then it's linear right now, but I can switch to, no, actually, to circular. So now you can see like it's the opposite, right? So we're gonna reverse it like that. You can actually do like very spread out like that. And then you're gonna notice it's gonna be very strong still. So you can actually tweak them slightly. So it's like there's a lot of you know, it's like it's very dark around it. If I bring closer, you're gonna see it's very, very dark, right? So normally if I'm doing something that's more natural, I don't go full black, for example. I just go like a little bit more towards gray, just to add a little bit more of that fade around it, right? So in combination with the DOF, sometimes he adds a little bit more of this artifact from the lenses. Like depending on the lens, if the lens is very high quality, you barely get any of the vignetting, right? But sometimes, you know, depending on the lens, it gets more blurry around the edges and a little bit more vignetting as well. And then let's see what else I use in here. The other stuff I don't think I use that much. I mean, like it's basically those controls. And then of course the exposure. If you're doing some renders, I would try to compensate the exposure in your lighting itself instead of like playing too much with this stuff here, because this becomes a kind of like an extra step that you're trying to chase later on, you know. So if you can nail everything with the default lighting and everything, that's better. But if you want more exposure here, let's say if I add like 0.5, see it's much brighter right now. So like 2, it's going to be much brighter. And then if I want to remove some exposure, 0.2, going to get darker. So I'm keeping at 0 for now. And then if I need more, I just like expose my lighting instead of like exposing the whole thing in the camera. And that's about it. I mean, like when it comes to camera, you know, that I don't use more than that. They have like, I think like you can plug some shaders. I believe there's a shader you can actually plug. I know that the Mental Ray had a bunch of shaders you could plug, but the thing is like everything in Arnold is so well put together, you know, it's like everything is kind of like physically accurate that they don't need a lot of like extra steps. Everything is very simple, you know, it's like you expand the tab and that's all the controls you need, you know. And then if you need something else, for example, like the fisheye, you're not going to have a tab with fisheye stuff. You're just going to, you know, follow that little manual they have in there. You know, it's like around here, right? And then that's basically how you do with the remap, like the UV remap. But I never did this one actually. I can try it. But yeah, it's very interesting. It's fairly accurate too. So you see, like I'll be getting already a nice result, and there's going to be like a miniature mole, and all those things, you know, are very fun to play with. I hope you guys are enjoying. Like if you're doing any tests with HDRIs, HDRIs are a miracle to me, because sometimes you go through the gallery in there, like in the HDRI Haven, and you see those maps, and they look like beautiful, you know, and then you plug them to your scene, and doesn't matter what you do with them. If you rotate and spin, they don't have the kind of detail you want, you know. And then sometimes you find one that looks quite boring. For example, like a one point, like a single point of light coming out, and then you plug it and you get this beautiful reflection and everything. It's very subtle, you know, it's the stuff that happens in them. Don't get deceived. For example, if you look at the map at first sight and then you see like, okay, this one's not going to work for me at all. You would be surprised, you know. Sometimes the one you think that's going to be the worst, it turns out to be the nicest lighting you're going to get, the most beautiful reflections and everything. So I would say like go to HDRI Haven and download a bunch of them. I have probably like 10 to 15 of them. And then you see like every time I post something, a new render is a different HDRI, because I'm testing things and I want to see how they look like. In this case here now, I have the flashlight together with an HDRI map, right? So I'm getting this type of result, which I'm kind of enjoying. So probably like the next time I post any render is going to look something like this, you know. Obviously with the hair, not mole, but yeah. And then tomorrow, I mean, like I'm going to try to wrap up with, you know, like showing some more tricks or whatever you guys want to learn, if you have any questions. And then how I comp this stuff, you know, it's like how I bring to Photoshop. And I add some, you know, like some bloom effect and, you know, or vignetting or a little bit of chromatic aberration, things like that, you know, and demonstrating some more of the plugin that I use.
Hey, Kris.
Yeah.
Little bit touch on the clay render.
Oh, what's that?
Clay rendering that you do. Will it be possible to touch on that tomorrow?
To show what? I'm sorry.
Clay render.
Oh, clay render. That's right. The clay render. Yes. Yeah. Let's do some of that tomorrow then, because yeah, tomorrow is gonna just like be wrapping it up, right? Like it's gonna be maybe just like the comp part of stuff like that. But then if we use our time smartly, I think we can do a lot of the clay render stuff. Do a little demo. I did that for the summit, but was very brief. But if we use like, let's say like 1 hour tomorrow to go through that, it'd be cool. You know, it's like I can just show like how my shader is set up, And then each one of the brushes I'm using, because the thing is like, it's not only like how you build the brush, right? Like you're gonna look visually, okay, I can apply that to a plane so I can see how it looks like. But it's, I made a post the other day and actually shared in our group that there's a lot to do with the gesture, you know, especially with the clay stuff. Just looking at the brush, I mean, like I can give you the same brush to like 100 different people, and not a lot of them gonna know how to use it correctly. Because when I'm building the brush, I'm thinking in my mind, okay, I'm trying to simulate that effect right there. So I know that I'm gonna have to add more speed when I draw with that, or I'm gonna have to be slower, you know. But I'm gonna be showing and trying to describe each one of them, what I'm doing, if I'm doing faster or slower, or if I'm doing like circular motion or more pressure, you know, things like that. So yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, those are man. People ask a lot for those clay renders. They want like they want me to share.
Really good to show the sculpts.
Yeah, they want me to share all the brushes, right? And I say like, man, I can teach you how to fish, but I'm definitely not gonna give you stuff for free. Yeah, like the one that I like the best for that kind of effect is the Oracle. That one is kind of interesting. I like the way that one turned out. Let's see if it's here. Yeah, this guy. Yeah, because I actually tried to mimic like different colors of the Chavan clay, right? So you get like the grayish, greenish, and then also the pink. So yeah, and I mean, like, see, like this is my raw render from Arnold and Maya, but then basically like this one here has a little color treatment, right? Just to pop and have more sharpness and everything. One thing that I add to those to the shader itself, it's a little bit of ambient occlusion. So you see like when people take pictures of their sculptures, and I normally notice that it has very like burned in like shadows and things like that. So I try to emulate that by adding a little ambient occlusion. So you see like between those guys, you know, it's like the color corrected or treated, you know, it's like it really pops. And this is a good example of using like a very shallow depth of field, right? So you get like very blurry, but you can see I was using very low samples. So you get all this noise. If you use like higher samples, you're gonna get some perfect stuff in there. And everything here, I mean, like everything was planned to be used to give this effect, you know? I think I built like probably like maybe like 10, 11, 12 brushes total to do all the effects. But if you observe like an actual sculpture, you're probably gonna find more things, you know? I was planning to actually do another pass and then find out other different things in a sculpture that I can actually incorporate to actually make it look more, it has more variation, you know? But when I try to use it smart in a way that, okay, if I'm using like some rake marks in here, I'm probably not gonna use everywhere. I'm gonna just leave some in there and then just pretend that I use my thumb to rub a little piece of clay in here, you know? And then let's say, for example, like if there is a spot where I think that in the real world, that spot would crack, right? Like if you're adding all the clay and everything. So I try to find those areas, for example, like this part right here, a cavity, and add a crack right there. So everything is like thinking of the real thing in real life and trying to emulate that, you know, constantly marking my clay piece, like with the, you know, it's like establishing my center lines and defining, for example, like the lips, right? It's almost like the sculpture itself, the primary forms, I don't have all of them in place, but I can just like mention them, right? Like just like define the lips, and I was like, this is a mention of it. Almost like, okay, this is my progress in the clay, right? And then from here, I'm just gonna establish like those forms. I'm gonna start laying down the little pillows of the lips and everything. But at this point, I'm just like mentioning them, right? So it's this whole trick about that's why people get a little tripped out about those renders, because it's not like a random thing. Things are planned to look like they are real, you know. The way that I'm just like mentioning those things, you know, like instead of like really putting the wrinkles in there, it's just a mention that, okay, it's planned. I'm gonna do some wrinkles in here, but right now I'm just like actually marking my clay, you know. And you see like the crack that I was mentioning right here, right? It's almost like you put the clay together, but then you didn't have enough filler in there, and all of a sudden it cracked. You know, it's like it's kind of like imperfect forms, right? And the trip to me about those this type of exercise, it's that people can really relate because they think of this object in the real world, right? The first thing they see, like, it looks like a real thing, so they can relate. So it becomes like, okay, I'm not gonna judge the model itself, the technicalities itself, right? So I'm not gonna be judging anything. I'm gonna just look at it as a physical piece. And as you can tell, I mean, like, if you look at the real clay sculpture, it's very forgiving, right? Sometimes you see the imperfections and everything, they don't bother you that much. Now, if you have a clean, like skin shader or something like that, people are gonna be pinpointing everything that's, you know, oh, that's not working, blah blah. But it's very forgiving with the clay. So that's the cool thing about it. So let's see. I have my caveman here too that turned out kind of okay with the clay shader. So let's look at this. And then tomorrow, of course, you can go through all of them. So I have this guy right here, right? It's kind of same deal. Do I have one with color? Yeah, this one has color. So this is what is even more rough, right? I have like all these established forms in there, but I mean, like, I have those fingerprints and things that I added everything. This one has more of those little balls of clay that I modeled. And it basically, like, it is, what's his name? Willem Dafoe, right? So you see the little balls of clay right there, the little imperfections I added to the model itself. And this, I believe, is all sculptures. I think it's the sculptures. I'm not sure. It might be just a simple Dynamesh. But everything gives a scale, right? Like, if you have like your fingerprints, you want to make sure, like, okay, how big is this object, right? If it's a tiny object, you want to make sure that you put like a big, giant fingerprint. If it's a little bit smaller, right, then you're gonna, yeah, we have to play with that. But yeah, it was a fun exercise. I might finish this guy. I think would be a good idea to finish and pose him. But yeah, like lots of clay marks. Some of them are working, some are not quite. But you know, establishing planes, right? Like you get like you know, like H polish and just establish some planes, and then you go and add the imperfection on top of the plane again. Almost like that same process, you know, it's like you're really rubbing the surface of the clay with a spatula or something, and then you go with a rake on top of it. You know, it's like kind of like following the same process, but just like virtually. And of course, like this is just a trick, right? It's not like I model the entire thing like that. I normally model the model, kind of block the forms, and then once they're blocked in a way that I like the forms, I don't go too deep in terms of detail or anything like that. Then I just start adding this fancy stuff on top. It's not like I sculpted everything with the clay, right? Obviously, it's just the look of it. And I think there's another one that I did with the clay. And then, of course, tomorrow I'm going to be showing how I did it. But there's, yeah, the Alex Gray one was kind of similar too. But yeah, it turned out kind of cool. But it's much cleaner than the other ones. This one I didn't go too crazy with anything. This is the kind of sketch, you know, it's like that's one night sketch, and then you just do it and just post it, you know. And then because you're lazy and you don't wanna go too crazy with the forms or anything, you just like disguise everything with imperfections, you know. So that's but I love those little renders, man. I have to do more of them for sure. Yeah, let's see. I think I had the hyena is different. The oracle. Yeah, I thought I had more of those actually. I guess not. Oh, I have the Frankenstein. The Frankenstein monster was done the same way. This is more recent, right? I mean, it's an old model, but I posted like recently those clay renders, which Rick Baker liked, so I'm happy with that. Yeah, in this case here, you see like I tried to add more of this those little lines, and they got a little bit artificial in a way. But I normally use the same lines, just like bigger. And it's a very simple trick. I basically use the clay buildup with the ramp assigned to it. So instead of like having the square, right, like the plain square, it's a ramp. So when you brush it, one side of the ramp is a little bit more raised. So you see more raised in here and a little bit more shallow in there. So that helps to actually add the, you know, the gesture to it. And then I have this brush here I'm going to be showing tomorrow that it has this shape like carved in, and then I add like a bunch of them with different sizes and intensities, and then it builds up like that. You know, looks like imperfection stuff, cracks in certain areas like this. You know, it's very rhythmic. You know, it's like you go through the whole form when you're looking at it. You can blur your eye like I normally do. And then you see like, okay, I can add a detail in here, another one in here, but I'm not going to go overkill because that's going to look artificial. So it's just like picking your battles and then doing that, you know. But I really like the look of those renders, and it's so fast to render and gives a nice result, you know. But tomorrow, let's talk about that. Thanks for suggesting. I'm gonna have to charge you more for that, man. Anyway, guys, we are at 11:40. I think we gave some more minutes to, you know. Sorry for the crash at the beginning. It happens, right? But you see, got a lot of stuff done today. We saw a little bit of all the shaders broke down. We went through some of the render like settings for the camera, like how to model and render a mole with strong depth of field, and all the maps in ZBrush, all the maps that are update, and basically like all the renders you're seeing online right now are using exactly the same maps in the same settings. So now it's your turn, guys. Now make the magic happen. That's all it's missing, you know. Help me to sell the next class, dudes. Just kidding. Yeah, I mean, like everything is recorded. You guys take it at your own pace, you know. It's like maybe some of you guys, like that's the blessing, the curse of having so many professionals in this class, is that most of you guys are busy. I actually contacted some of you who are not active participants of our class and just asked, like, is everything okay? You know, I was like, do you need anything? And they said, man, I just got swamped with work. You know, it's like people just got swamped. It was like just timing was bad, you know. So they feel bad about it. And it was like, I feel bad about it because they're not present. But at the same time, I mean, it's the material is all there. It's all online. You guys can go when you have the time and just like go through like how many hours, like 32 hours of video or more. And then I'm pretty sure you're gonna find like little things in there. Maybe not the entire process is gonna be exciting. Some stuff is gonna be a little boring for you, but some stuff is gonna, you know, just those little. When I go to those conferences, you know, it's like I hear a little thing, you know, I was like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm gonna try that. So just those little hints in there might help, you know, to improve your workflow and your work. So I think for that, it's already a good experience, you know. I just hope you guys can find the time to do it. Otherwise, it would be a waste, you know. There's a lot of information there. All right, guys. Awesome. Tomorrow is our last day. I cannot believe we got to this point. With only 2 crashes so far. Oh, amazing. And I'm gonna be, you know, I'm gonna keep you guys in the group, of course, and then the other people are gonna be joining the group later, and we're gonna make transform that group into a giant family. We're gonna all be singing kumbaya, kumbaya, kumbaya very soon. All right, guys. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Kris. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Okay. Bye, guys.